Support for this program is provided by the men and women of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Through sustainable forestry, LFA members promote the health and productivity of Louisiana's forests for generations to come. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting. Support also provided by First South Farm Credit, the farm credit system's lender for production agriculture, agribusiness, and landowner financing in Louisiana since 1933. The Arts Council of Central Louisiana supports emerging cultural organizations, artists, and lifelong learning through grant opportunities and the resources of the Fry Nonprofit Development Center, the Hearn Stage at the Crest Theater, and the Coughlin-Saunders Performing Arts Center in downtown Alexandria.
Hello, I'm Beth Courtney. Welcome to Louisiana Public Square. We're delighted to be coming to you from the Coughlin-Saunders Performing Arts Center in historic downtown Alexandria.
I'm Craig Freeman. We chose to travel to the heart of Louisiana to discuss a topic that could be considered the life's blood of our state, agriculture. Over 170 different commodities make up Louisiana's agricultural economy, second only to California in diversity. From the field to the frozen food section, the value added to these products generates billions for Louisiana. But with so many steps between production and consumption, as consumers, we sometimes take for granted the importance of this economic engine.
Well, Louisiana agriculture also provides jobs for thousands of farmers, fishers, and foresters and ranchers. But this often overlooked asset is facing economic hits and a diminishing number of producers. So how daunting are the challenges confronting our agricultural industry? Where are opportunities to add value to what we produce? And what does the future hold for all things Louisiana grown?
From sugarcane and shrimp to chicken, cattle, and corn, agriculture is big business in the state.
When you look at Louisiana as a whole, we have over 27.8 million acres in the state. The majority of that, over 85%, is in agriculture, forestry, or aquaculture.
Mike Strain is the commissioner of Louisiana's Department of Agriculture and Forestry. This sector, Strain notes, provides jobs for hundreds of thousands of Louisianians.
More than 243,000 people are employed, or 9.7% of our workforce, directly or indirectly in agriculture.
Louisiana agriculture had a total economic value of $8.3 billion in 2009. But as significant as this contribution was, it was a $1.2 billion drop from 2008. One reason for the decline was the 25% hit from the recession to the state's biggest agricultural commodity, forestry.
The core of forestry is still very strong.
Buck Vandersteen is the executive director of the Louisiana Forestry Association. He notes that of the state's 3 closed pulp and paper plants, one has already reopened, and other facilities are increasing their assets.
Millions of dollars of capital investment, meaning that their strategic thinking is that things are going to improve, we're going to move forward, and they're positioning themselves to take advantage of that.
Vandersteen says that the recession may be out of Louisiana's control.
But the markets, we can encourage businesses to come in. We can continue to build a Louisiana that is attractive for businesses to come.
Through tax breaks and other financial incentives, Louisiana has recently attracted a majority of economic development projects in the agriculture sector. These include a cotton spinning facility in Lacassine, the first of 2 mills that will ultimately use between 15 to 20% of Louisiana's cotton crop to spin yarn. ConAgra's sweet potato processing plant in Delhi, which will turn Louisiana sweet potatoes into French fries, waffle fries, and other products. Point Bioenergy's $100 million wood pellet facility at the Port of Baton Rouge is set to open in 2011. Each year, the plant will use 800,000 tons of timber harvested within a 150-mile radius to create pellets for Europe's heating market. As markets expand, the challenge may be finding enough producers to meet the demand, especially for food. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's latest census reveals that the average age of farm operators is rising and fewer young people are entering the profession. The average age of the American farmer is 57 years old. In Louisiana, it's slightly higher, 57.3. The average age of the Louisiana forester and rancher is 65.
We're really looking at a senior citizen small business.
Jack Cutshall is a 72-year-old cattle rancher in Glenmora. The 40 head of cattle on his Rafter J Ranch represents the average herd size for ranchers in the U.S. Cutshall says, like others in his industry, when he retires, his ranch may cease to exist.
As many of us senior citizens go out of the business, there's no one to take the gap, no one to fill in.
Agricultural census data reveal that the number of farm operators under 25 years old has decreased by 30% from 2002 to 2007. Contributing to this situation are high equipment costs and a lack of available or affordable land. Justin DeKeyzer, a 27-year-old fourth-generation farmer in Boyce, explains.
Hard to get the land to farm unless you own it. You know, a lot of people, as land gets passed down, rented land gets passed on to their kids. Most of them sell, and most of that is either sold too high that farmer can't buy it, or it's put to houses.
Profitability in the industry may also be a deterrent. Rising gas prices have affected everything from transportation to fertilizer costs. And if federal climate change legislation is adopted, Strain says the situation will get worse.
It is estimated in the next 25 years, if cap and trade passes, it would decrease profitability on Louisiana farms by over 30 to 35%. It would drive up the cost of food to the average homeowner over 6 to 8%, up to 10% in many different areas, because the cost of fuel will rise, the cost of fertilizer will rise, the cost of all inputs, everything it takes to raise a crop, will rise.
Supporters of cap and trade say farmers may actually make money off the legislation. If farmers reduce the amount of carbon emitted, industries failing to meet the EPA's emission standards can buy credits from them. Cutshall is concerned about an amendment to the Clean Water Act that would extend the powers of the Environmental Protection Agency.
The ponds that I built to provide water for my cattle, the EPA would be able to have regulatory authority over how I use those ponds.
Cutshall considers the move a burden on an industry that already sees stewardship as a good business practice.
We think we are the first environmentalists because we're the ones on the land that are actually taking care of it.
Cutshall uses crimson clover to naturally increase his soil's nitrogen content, eliminating the environmental risks from fertilizer runoff. Ville Platte farmer Richard Fontenot agrees that conservation is a priority for operators across the state.
Without sustainability and without conserving our resources, whether it be water, whether it be soil, or any of the different aspects of production agriculture, they are the key elements to our survival for generations to come.
Fontenot uses laser leveling on his fields to preserve water and a global positioning system when fertilizing and harvesting for more efficient application and production.
We're making more crop using less fertilizer, we're just putting it in the right place.
Louisiana may yield more producers through a new mentoring program. LYAP, or the Louisiana Young Agricultural Producers Program, targets 11th and 12th graders. AgCenter professor John Westra.
We are working with them to become more aware of the industry, more aware of opportunities for financing, more opportunities for working in terms of processing and value-added production, and just anything and everything that's needed to get started in agriculture.
This new crop of producers will be facing a bright and busy future, according to Commissioner Strain.
The greatest growth in agriculture and forestry and aquaculture in this hemisphere is going to be in southeastern United States in the next generation. And we are poised to take advantage of all of that.
Well, poised for a good discussion are our audience members. They include Alexandria area residents who were randomly recruited and surveyed for us by LSU's Public Policy Research Lab. We also have a member of the Legislative Youth Advisory Council. Of those who responded to our pre-show question on the importance of the farming and agricultural sectors to the local economy, 60% said they are critical. 40% rank them as important but not critical. When asked about the amount of help that the federal government gives to farmers, 50% of respondents feel the government is not doing enough. 23% feel that enough is being done, while 26% were unsure. In the Good News for Farmers department, 82% of those surveyed would be more likely to buy food at the grocery if it's labeled as being from local farms. Only 6% would be less likely to buy locally produced food. Running those farms one day may be the young people that 68% of respondents say they would encourage to pursue farming as a career. But 23% of those surveyed would advise a young person interested in a farming career to consider something else. So let's start there. If the farmers are aging, who feeds us over the next 20 years? How do we get food to our table if our farmers are growing older? Tom, how do we get, what happens if all the farmers start to get too old to farm?
Unfortunately, it looks like the farming industry may follow the suit of the technology and the manufacturing industry and go offshore, and that would be horrendous effect for our tables.
So we're shipping farming overseas in the same way we're shipping some other parts of our economy?
Without innovative procedures to encourage young farmers or to encourage more productive farming in the states, I think that's a real possibility. Jim,
you agree? You looked a little shocked like I did.
Well, it does do that. There are certain industries in Louisiana that are being really affected by imports, particularly. The aquaculture industry is very heavily affected by the imports from Asia in catfish and crawfish as well. And so it could happen.
What do we do to get more farmers here? I mean, what can we do to make sure that we've got better farmers here? Patrick?
Well, if you talk to a doctor, he'll say, well, I wouldn't encourage my son or daughter to be a doctor, so it may be some of that. But just then, like, for instance, rural doctors, they're trying to provide incentives for people to practice in rural areas, so it may be important to have some incentives for, young people to go into farming, and particularly educating them about the life, because you talk to a farmer, these are dedicated people. I mean, this is their life, and like one of the guys on the coast said, what would I do if I didn't do this, So it's just part of our culture, and I think it's important.
Matt, would you take an incentive to go into farming instead of going into engineering or law?
Of course, especially if the incentives are great enough to do it. Yeah, the tough part is that, farmers work for their livelihood. What they put into it, that's what they get out of it. And that's what I think scares some youth away from it.
So are you saying that, young people don't want to work today, or
it's not that, it's just the way that they work. With the different age of technology now, most youth spend their time, either on the internet or playing video games instead of, being outside. So I think that may scare away the youth more than it would to bring them incentives.
Daniel, you look like you agreed a little bit.
I've farmed all my life. Okay. Farming is not easy. Right. And it costs a lot more money today to get into farming. If you don't inherit it with the equipment that you have to buy, just like the video showed, it's very expensive, and you have to be dedicated. And the people in this country, the people in the whole world, don't realize the importance of agriculture. Agriculture is number one in your life. Without food, we're not here.
Right.
And that's the first thing that people have to realize, the importance of food in their lives. And that's what's not there. And you as a person, we talked about jobs just now. Every job in this country touches agriculture. The further processing of an agricultural product deems everything that you see at a grocery store or you see in the store. It touches it all. Okay. And we've got those, that's all there. We've got when is a cow more than a cow? What is made with a cow? And everything that you touch every day, everything you ever touch, you touch in agriculture all day long, but the people don't realize that. And that's the incentive that the young folks, people need to see.
Need to see it. Genevieve, you were nodding your head as well. You agree?
Yes, we've talked about it all our married lives. That's just part of the way we are. We're farmers, and 4 of our children have graduated from the College of Ag at LSU. 2 are in the food industry. Okay. Careers in agriculture are tremendous, medical, not just human, but veterinary, all kind of technology, journalism, as Farm Bureau News well stipulates, just so many things that kids can go into. They just need a little bit of education.
And so if we start them younger, you know, 4-H and, you know, community gardens or backyard gardens, those are the things.
Right. I believe you need to start them even younger than that, because kids go to pre-K school, 3-4 years old. They're learning eating habits. They need to learn how to eat nutritiously. And where does that nutritious food come from? Farmers.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Kathy.
Perhaps it is a matter of not educating our children, not letting them know. Inner city kids are not aware of where their food comes from. Anything that we can do, those of us that have come from farm backgrounds, I think anything that we can do to encourage the education of all children as to what's healthy and what's local and what those vegetables look like, so that they'll make choices to try those.
Okay. Okay, well, and Kim, it looked like you also, is there anything else we can do? You know, maybe we can get them at 4 or 5 or 6, but it sounds like by the time they're 17, they say, hey, no way. Kim, what can we do?
Well, I have mixed feelings about it. Being in education for 33 years, I see the importance of educating our youth, because that's where it begins. It's kind of like baseball. You know, we start those pre-Kers playing baseball, and they grow up to love it, and a few will pursue the professional career. But in farming, because the importance of farming, like Daniel said, is so very important to all of us. I mean, without food, there's no us. But without educating our youth at an early age and the importance of it, I think we're just spinning our wheels. And I mean, I'm talking about a very aggressive, supported program in all communities.
We spend money on economic development. Would you, when I think of economic development, I think of steel plants or car plants. Should we be spending more money like that on agriculture, on sweet potato plants or something else, Dan?
Just look at what this video showed you just now. Economic development, in my opinion, people don't understand what that means. Economic development is developing what you have in your state, in your area. And that's not what we're doing.
So, but shouldn't we reach out for the movie industry or reach out for the car industry? We've got
but that doesn't put food in your mouth. Okay. That doesn't keep this state going. That brings people in for just a little while and they're gone. Okay, French. I'm trying to learn how to speak English because I knew French when I went to school. All right. But for a long time, French wasn't popular. It wasn't the in thing. I was always proud of my French-speaking heritage. Okay. And that's what we have to do with agriculture. How many people live on a farm today? When I grew up, I was 63 years old last week, all right? When I was young and growing up, we all lived on the farm, right, Tom? Pretty much everybody was on the farm. Now, you've got 2% of agriculture, of people living on farms. Right. So the kids aren't brought up in that atmosphere. So we have to educate them at an early age. We have to educate these children now. Teach them where their food comes from. It's not the back of the store.
Linda, I mean, what about incentives? I mean, should we be paying kids? Should we be paying farmers? And are we paying farmers too much with some of the farm subsidies that we have?
I don't think so. In order to get the results, you need to create incentives in order to increase the product. And I think even with, I was agreeing with everything that was said here. I think 17 years old is a little too late to wait to teach the kids about agriculture. It should start very young, because the more you learn about it, the more interest you get, and then with the incentive, you know, the more likelihood you'll have more people in this industry.
So we need to teach kids about farming the way we teach kids about baseball or football. Yes. And if they love it early, maybe they'll stick with it a little bit later. But Laverne, what do you think about subsidies? I mean, you know, once we're 20 or 30 or 40, and it sounds like a big part of the problem is you can't afford the land, and so if you don't inherit it, it's tough to break into farming. Should we also provide incentives to help people buy farms or buy equipment or replace equipment? What do you think?
Pretty difficult question to answer because it looks to me like if you don't have family who had land already, most land, good farmland, is awful expensive to buy and take the risk of making it work. And I guess everybody has to face a challenge sometimes in life, and a lot of people in some areas are taking that challenge and making it work, but I honestly don't know how you would encourage people to go out on a limb and do that.
Well, we've got some people that may be able to help us with that challenge. And so when we return, we'll be joined by a panel of experts to further discuss agriculture across the state. Welcome back to Louisiana Public Square. We're discussing agriculture in Louisiana. Joining us now is our panel of experts. State Representative Andy Anders is a Democrat from Vidalia who chairs the House Committee on Agriculture, Forestry, Aquaculture, and Rural Development. He is a member of the Tensas Concordia Soil and Water Conservation Board and also raises cattle and hay. Carrie Castille is the Deputy Assistant Commissioner of the Louisiana Department of Agriculture and Forestry, or LDAF. The focus of her work at LDAF includes agricultural marketing, agritourism, renewable energy, and natural resource policy analysis. Julie Baker Richard is the Assistant Director of Field Services for the Louisiana Farm Bureau, the state's largest organization representing farmers and ranchers. She is also the coordinator of the Federation's Young Farmers and Ranchers program. Michael Salassi is a professor in the LSU AgCenter's Department of Agricultural Economics and Agribusiness. His research focuses on crop production and economics, farm business management, and the study of biofuel production using Louisiana feedstock. Let's go to our participants for their questions. And Daniel, I think you wanted to start us off with our first question about subsidies and the need for subsidies.
Right. In y'all's opinion, are the farmers better off with subsidies from the government or the price at the grocery store, the price for the end product, receiving the fair price?
And so you don't think that farmers get a fair price at the grocery store?
No.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. I used to have a dairy, milk dairy cows. And in 1969, when I started my dairy, I received $8 a hundred for my milk. In 1972, I received $12 a hundred for my milk. When I shut my dairy 3 years ago this year, the price of milk came back to $12 and $14 a hundred. So the price received by the farmer, according to his inputs, was way out of whack. And if that would have continued and be, at the fair market price, we would be better off than with the government help. That's all the farmers want, in my opinion.
Dr. Salassi, is there some price depression, or is there something that farmers have to worry about?
Well, one of the risks that farmers face and forestry industry face, but particularly agriculture, crop producers, livestock producers, that most people don't realize is that they don't set their selling price. Market prices of any commodities are going to go up and down because of supply and demand. The price of oil, for example, goes up and down because of supply and demand. But when an oil company sells or processes that oil, they set the selling price. The great risk that agricultural producers face is that they don't set their selling price. And so that price is going to vary because of supply and demand. And if their production costs are $12, one year that price may be $13, the next year it may be $8. So they face tremendous price risk, and that's one of the reasons that government programs and price support programs came about. They started in the 1930s to try to support the price of what at that time the government thought was important commodities, and they've existed through today to try to combat that price risk that growers face.
Jim, you look like you had another question about agriculture and the way we kind of develop this.
I believe what Dr. Salassi said was about you asked about subsidies. It's a tiny fraction of what the federal budget is. And so for the value that you get for the agricultural subsidies, if that's what you choose to call them, is a tremendous value to the consumers and the citizens of the country.
And so we're getting more than we pay for, at least in federal tax dollars, you say?
Absolutely, okay. Absolutely. It gives the farmer, in those cases where he's able to do it, although those are getting out of whack too, those things give some stability to the price that he's able to be assured that he's going to give. Because it's not like he starts planting today and then harvests it tomorrow, and so you know what the selling price is going to be. It's a whole year process.
Dr. Richard, you wanted to add something?
I was going to agree. I agree with Mr. Daniel that we don't get a fair price, or probably the price that our product's worth at the grocery store. But our general consumers have become accustomed to a cheap and safe product at the grocery store. And that's what they've become accustomed to. So without these safety nets that we're talking about, which is what those payments are put in place for, our farmers can't give you that safe and cheap and wholesome product. And that's what, I'm a fourth generation farmer. I'm also married to a rice farmer. So, I deal with both sides of the spectrum. And when I see what we do on the farm every day, and I understand, what the price at the grocery store is, and there's a big gap in there, but that's where that gap is filled with these subsidy payments.
But the consumer is misunderstood by the consumer what the farmer is getting by getting the subsidies. Exactly what Jim is saying. It's misunderstood.
But as a consumer, I think I've paid more for milk last year than I did in '72.
But so the farmers got less.
The same amount.
The farmers got less. You didn't know that.
Right.
And you don't know it. That doesn't trickle down to you. And the safety net is not a real safety net because the price, it's on paper. It changes. We've had in the last couple of years where we had a whole bunch of soybeans and we had a whole glutton of corn. Then all of a sudden in 2 months, we made a mistake. But the farmer, hit the bottom on that.
We're somewhat misled by the federal dollars that we're speaking of, and what gets to the farmer to help with the situation is it's probably 78% of the money goes to other programs. There's only a very, small percentage that goes basically back to help Mr. Lyons and the rest of us. And I've farmed for 26 years or more and raised 3 kids, and still I either had to get bigger or, succeed. And I chose to rent my farm out and kept my cattle or whatever. But as the farm programs changed and the bills and whatever else, they haven't really suited what we've experienced in agriculture.
And you talk about the consumers that don't understand farm spending. When you hear terms like so many $1 million for the Farm Bill, which comes up every 4 years, 79% of that Farm Bill money is not going to farmers. It's for food and nutrition programs, food stamp programs. There's 7 or 8% for conservation programs. And so out of that total Farm Bill money that you hear people talk about 7 or 8% is price supports and income supports that go to growers. And that, when you think about it, when you think of what industry is keeping small rural communities viable, in Louisiana or any other state, it's agriculture. And that 7 or 8% is what is helping keep that industry and those rural communities viable.
And Dr. Castille, I'm sure there's also a little bit that the state does.
Well, one thing that I'd like to mention is as everybody has said, farmers are price takers and not price makers. It costs a lot of money to run these tractors, and we have to take out loans and various other things. So the only way that we can improve our profitability is to increase our efficiencies. And oftentimes it's very, very difficult with high input costs. The state, we're always looking at any type of agricultural economic development opportunities, identifying niche markets, but sometimes we have to just go with what's going on with supply and demand.
The biggest thing is if you have a disaster, okay? I borrowed $300,000 to farm this year. If I have a disaster and I can't get that crop out, and let's say I only turned over $150,000, I'm $150,000 behind, I've got to find that money. And next year, it's not all going to come, but they expect for me to pay that money back every year. So when we have the disaster programs, that's misunderstood also. Sometimes it's 3 years down the road before we receive the disaster money after it has been said, we're going to help them, we're going to give them some aid. It's 3 years down the road. That's too late for the bank.
Well, I'm an educated man, and this is all news to me. Kathy, I think you had a question about how we get this message to students. And so tell us more.
Well, if you look at the statistics on how many agriculture programs, it used to be that every parish had their own school system, and they had an agriculture and a 4-H program in that school system. due to economics, you've had to consolidate. We've had to eliminate agriculture programs from schools and consolidate that into one, maybe two high schools in a parish. That's taking the message away from where it needs to be put.
So how do we get the message to our young farmers, Dr. Risha?
And that's what we're trying to do at Farm Bureau, but I think we're not the only one that's trying to do that. We fully support having FFA programs because what I think the general misconception is that we're teaching agriculture, we're teaching science, we're teaching math, we're teaching a lot of other lessons in those classrooms that they reach out through all aspects of life. Louisiana Farm Bureau has the Ag in the Classroom program, and we are one of the state farm bureaus that actually support this program. And so what we do is try to take that message of agriculture and incorporate it into the history, the math, the reading, the science, into high school and elementary and junior high classrooms to give them the true aspect of what agriculture really is, that it's, there's a lot more to farming than just planting a seed. It's a business, and there's a lot more that goes into a small business than just the science behind the plant. That's one aspect of it, but it's so much more. And so if we can get that message to them at an early age, I think it's truly beneficial, but we also need to continue that. When they get to high school and they're trying to choose a career path, we also need to support the fact that they may want to farm and it's not a bad thing. I'm the fourth generation in my family to be involved in production agriculture. I would have never moved back to the farm if I wouldn't have gotten married. So I was one of those students that went to college, got a degree in agriculture, got 3 degrees in agriculture, worked for an ag industry, but I wasn't on the farm hands-on every day. And I'm still not hands-on every day, but it truly plays a huge role in my life. But I was one of those kids straight off the farm that chose not to go back there. But for that small section of the farm population that those kids want to go back, we really need to support them. And that's what programs like the LAYOT program that the LSU AgCenter is helping to really get started this week. And I actually came from there this morning. And it's truly refreshing to see 14 young individuals that want to be in production agriculture.
But the problem with that is when it comes before the legislature to support that program, what happens? They cut the funding. That we don't have the funding from the state. Economic development, what you asked a while ago, there you go.
Well, that's when they start talking about the cuts, and now you're aimed at me. But like you said, I'm very much supportive of Commissioner Strain and what he's done, and LSU and the ag centers and whatever else. And the thing that we were talking about, and I introduced legislation of agritourism, and Carrie helped with it and whatever, is the liability for me to bring somebody to my farm to pet a cow that's tame and then they get kicked. And I mean, over the lawsuits and whatever else. And now through the help of Commissioner Strain and LSU and Dr. Carell and everybody that we did pass legislation, you still have to have insurance. But this is a way to help with the schools and the ag in the classrooms or whatever to train. Because I brought legislators from the North Shore, New Orleans, hunting or whatever, and I still have chickens, and they had never seen a chicken sitting on an egg. I think they all shop with, Walmart, and I guess they think it's like Santa Claus with little elves, that they're just put them in the box and stuff.
Don't misunderstand what I'm saying. You understand what agriculture is, but we've got a lot of our elected legislators that have no idea where the food that they eat comes from.
And there's more than just farming. I mean, I think there's also there's forest, there's cattle. And Tom, I think you had a question about the cattle industry.
Yes, while we can continue to talk about subsidies and price supports, and that will always, invoke some passion amongst people. One of the concerns that the cattlemen should have is the programs that do not allow us to add value or market our products within our home areas. And we would hope that through the Department of Ag and through the Louisiana Cattlemen's Association that we could continue to add value to the local products that we produce. And things that legislate against that are things like the estate law, the estate taxes that looks like they're going to come back and haunt us. The Clean Water Act that still certainly may come back and bite us severely. So we would hope that we could continue to get some value-added incentives not necessarily subsidies or supports, but some incentives to add value to our products and market those locally. We think that would be our product.
And Dr. Castille, can you also help us with this notion of value added? What does that mean, and then how are we working with that?
Yeah, one interesting point, in fact, today I received a call from a restaurant in Lafayette, and their goal was to be able to serve locally grown products in their restaurants. Our goal, and one of the challenges that we have, and we all need to look at, is how do we connect those restaurants to our producers. There's a market maker program that the LSU AgCenter is working on, kind of a Craig's list of agricultural products, but that connection needs to be made, and that relationship needs to be nurtured. And that's when you start to make those connections where our restaurants start to learn what's going on the farm. Of course, with things like grass-fed beef, organics, there's a whole number of different niche markets that we can definitely tap into, and we're trying to look for those opportunities. Back on the education side with our farmers and with our youth, one thing that we're looking at with the Department of Ag is where are we going to find our next agricultural workforce? Our goal, our mission is to be able to protect our natural resources, our food supply, and be able to look at economic development opportunities for agriculture. But let's look at protecting our food supply. Where is the next workforce going to come? If people aren't going into agriculture, we want people that are coming in to be able to regulate and protect our food supply that has an agricultural background and an agricultural knowledge. We talked about the rural doctors. One thing that we're facing throughout the nation is the lack of food animal vets. That's our first line of defense if there's any type of disease outbreak. And if something happens, we have to have that supply ready to go, ready to deploy to be able to address these issues within minutes, to be able to quarantine, get the information out to the different entities, Farm Bureau, the AgCenter, and be able to have this addressed.
And Linda, I know you had a question too about how aggressive we are at doing this. And there's been a lot of the federal agricultural department in the news recently. You had a question about recruiting, and I was going to add a part to your question about diversity in recruiting and how do we do that. But you had a question about getting more farmers.
Yes, I was. My question was, why aren't there more aggressive recruiting? Because I feel that when you wait until someone's ready to graduate at 17, or they have their mind on something else. But if you start grooming these children at a very young age and give more information and give incentives for different aspects of the agricultural program, then maybe we can increase more farmers in the future.
It's just very hard to, it's not a corporation where you're going to go out and recruit for a business that you own. I mean, it's going to be somebody that's going to have the skills and really have the drive and the love of farming, because when you get up every morning and you turn on the Weather Channel to hope that we don't have a hurricane on Monday morning, there's a huge amount of risk and a huge amount of involvement, and it's not an 8 to 5 o'clock job. And so I think we probably need to get the knowledge base out there, what it actually entails and what farming actually is. That's what we try to do at Farm Bureau. We don't want that to come from a book. We want that to come from somebody. And that's what we try to do in Young Farmers and Ranchers by getting them involved in the LEOP program. These young farmers aged 18 to 35 are the mentors of these juniors and seniors in high school. They need to see that somebody can do it and somebody has done it, and they need to embrace that and find somebody that they can connect with within their same commodity, within their same industry, and use them as a role model to show them that they can.
So how do you get people to get this message out to, because I feel that if you present any program properly and more aggressively with more information, even people who weren't interested can become interested with the information and learning more about, because you're not going to be interested in nothing you don't know anything about. But the more you know and the more you learn, the more you may become interested. And some people have gotten into certain things, not all the time because of the money, because of the love and desire for it.
Right, and when I was working on my dissertation, that's one of the things I looked at, was the perception of agriculture to the general public. And one of the key factors that we looked at was the knowledge base. And if your knowledge was increased or was above average, was your perception above average? And it was. So, our knowledge was extremely high about what agriculture really is in the state of Louisiana, as compared to across the country. But it's not always that way across the country. We're just lucky here because we do have some rural roots. They have 4-H programs and FFA programs in the schools. We need to encourage those to continue. We try with Ag in the Classroom, but it really takes individuals that know what agriculture is and know what agriculture and production agriculture entails to get that message out. We need all the help we can get.
And the state is doing some things too?
One thing that comes to mind, and you're seeing this increasing, is edible schoolyards and schoolyard gardens. When you bring kids, if there's a plot of land nearby a school, or if a farmer wants to come and lend a hand and be able to show kids, this is what it takes to be able to produce the food that you're getting ready to eat in the cafeteria. One thing that we also need to look at is the culture that surrounds farming. The work ethic that has been developed from these young kids. Getting up early in the morning, seeing things out until completion, going to bed late at night, knowing what it takes to be able to turn a profit. If we lose farming, you're losing a culture. You're losing the work ethic that's been developed and instilled in these young agricultural kids, our rural kids, and you're losing a way of life. And more important, we need to maintain that. In these programs like Louisiana Ag Producers Programs, 4-H, FFA, it's really developing work ethic and character. I mean, the young man here that was speaking earlier, I'm very much impressed at your ag terminology, what you bring up, and it's a testament to the programs in 4-H as well as yourself and probably your parents.
And one of the things that I think also helps people get more aware about farmers is farmers markets. And Dr. Salassi, if you could talk a little bit about how are farmers markets successful, and are they helpful at kind of moving people towards the end?
I think they are, particularly for things like vegetables and fruits that are produced on a small scale. The popularity of farmers markets in major cities like Baton Rouge, Lafayette, New Orleans have increased substantially over the last 10 or 20 years, and that's an opportunity for those producers to supply the market and directly with the consumer with no middleman, and that's a tremendous opportunity that we need to encourage.
And Laverne, we're talking about farming, but there's also horses. I mean, horses I thought are number one, or maybe the second or third largest industry, fourth in the state. I thought you had a question about that industry and how we can change that.
These young people that are not going to the farms, get them a horse. Get them a racing quarter horse. Racing quarter horse industry in Louisiana has boomed. We're the envy of the nation because you own a mare, you breed her to a stallion. If you sell me the mare today and she has a baby tomorrow, I'm the breeder on it. When that foal runs in any kind of quarter horse race in Louisiana, first, second, or third, you'll receive an amount in the mail equal to 25%. We call it mailbox money. We got this by getting slots passed at racetracks in Louisiana. Not only did we help the agricultural business, these farms, there's 4 farms in Louisiana just maxed out. More jobs to come to these places and work because they have that. Many more jobs. Tourists come in from out of state. Delta Downs at Vinton. There's people from Texas come over there and spend money in Louisiana every night.
Representative, I had no idea that the horse industry was doing all this.
That was
well, I'm trying to help get another out, and this is self-supporting. And when we got it, that passed through the legislature, there was a certain amount of money went to quarter horses for purse money and thoroughbreds and breeders' awards. So there is other outs, and I'm promoting our industry right now. We meaning the Louisiana Quarter Horse Breeders Association, have the second largest yearling sale in America. 3 years ago, we had the very largest. On August the 13th and 14th, we'll be selling 570 yearlings in 2 days. That's the horses that'll be racing next year.
Okay, I had no idea. I mean, this is economic.
That's the best kept
secret. That's what
we
were speaking of. That was the best kept secret in the state of Louisiana. I own no horses, so I'm. And like
the horse
you said,
industry in Louisiana could be number one commodity if it was promoted. That's what I meant when I talked about economic development. I'm chairman of the Louisiana Equine Council, which represents all horses in the state of Louisiana. And if the horses were given a chance, if all of the horse industry would get some funding like Laverne's talking about, we could be the envy of the United States, the horse industry in Louisiana. But it's to get people to understand, again, it's an educational process. It's to get people to understand, just like being a farmer. And what you're talking about when you were talking about the kids, the FFA programs in the state. When the FFA program goes under at a school, it's gone. The schools aren't adding agriculture programs, which could teach the kids. So that's a bad thing that's happening. That needs to come back. Some years ago, I had kids calling me.
Let's talk about the horses, and then we'll come back to the farm.
But you got a lot.
The horse, and that is a hidden secret. And like you said, I've just learned of that. I didn't make the vote on that. It was prior to my term. Are you familiar with that?
Well, it is, a lot of people, as you say, are not aware of that. And that's one of the advantages that Louisiana has, is that to be a relatively small state, our agriculture and forestry industry and fisheries industry is more diverse, as the introductory statement said, than California. We have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of agricultural, forestry, and livestock industries to promote forestry, the horse industry, the various crop industries, and I think if we're going to keep Louisiana agriculture profitable, we need to find ways to add value to each of those. Every commodity has a different path that it's taken. It's going to have different things that we need to do, but we have a tremendous opportunity to promote that.
Now, Kim, I know we're talking about industries that are booming, but it sounds like in some areas there are industries that are starting to contract a little bit, and you had some questions about that.
Well, the cotton industry, and now we're opening, I just found out about the plant in Lacassine. Will we, as a state, be able to support that?
So it sounds
will we produce enough cotton to support that, or will we be importing cotton from not only our states but from other countries? Or
well, that was,
can someone answer that?
I ran a cotton gin for 10 or 12 years and grew cotton, and we still raise cotton on the farm now. And it's kind of the thing about cotton is it's so expensive and so much input costs for it. And with the corn, when the corn prices went up, and it was a lot less risk and a lot less money involved. So now whether we have enough cotton, this is probably the lowest amount of cotton planted in, I guess, the history that I know of in the state of Louisiana. And to run the mill, I'm not exactly sure what it consists of, but we certainly want to make sure we have enough cotton in the state.
One thing to say about Zahi and the cotton spinning plant is Louisiana has the ability to attract private investment. These are private dollars coming into Louisiana. And we need to look at more of these types of investments, maybe public-private partnerships, but this is, in fact, huge agricultural economic investment in that area, and a testament, again, to our ability to be able to attract private dollars.
Kathy?
Is it appropriate to ask the question now? What opportunities do Louisiana farmers have to look at exporting? If we're that diverse and we are excellent producers, have a little bit of knowledge of exporting pecans to China. Mm-hmm. When you look at the numbers, they go up and down. Are there other opportunities for exporting agricultural products?
Absolutely. I think the rest of the world is starting to take note of the quality of our products and the safety of our products and the availability. We have a great growing season here, and our availability is perfect. The other thing is the infrastructure, our port systems, the Port of South Louisiana, the Port of Lake Charles, the investment that the state has made in our infrastructure, our highway system, et cetera. As you've said, we need to promote these products. And there's an organization called the Southern United States Trade Association. Actually, Commissioner Strain is the chair, and he's done an excellent job of promoting products like pecans. We understand that Georgia kind of has a corner of the market, but we want to be able to take part of that corner. So we're doing a much better job now to be able to look at what we have and what's unique to Louisiana. People want our products. They really do. We're unique. People come here to eat. They want to buy them once they get home. They have a lot of confidence in the safety of our products, and it's time that we promote that. And it's going to take people like you to be able to tell the story. Oftentimes, people that want to buy our products, they don't want to hear from us, but they want to hear from you, the farmer. You have a story to tell, you have background, you have knowledge, you know how it was grown, you know when it was planted, you know when it was picked, and that's the ability to be able to tell that story, and that's what people want.
Dr. Salassi?
All of the various commodities in the state, particularly those that are exporting as well as those that are sort of import sensitive like sugar, are looking at ways that the producer can sort of vertically integrate and cut out that middleman and take more of that retail price. You talked about pecans, rice, for example. More than half of our rice is exported to Latin America. The rice industry has looked at ways to facilitate exporting that commodity to Latin America. The sugar industry in the state, we're one of the major sugar producers in the United States. We're an import-sensitive crop in the sense that we don't export sugar out of the United States. We limit the imports, but the sugar industry in Louisiana, the growers and the raw sugar mills are in the process right now of building a brand new sugar refinery next to the existing Imperial refinery in Gramercy. That's a $100 million project where the Louisiana sugar growers and mills are working with Cargill and Imperial to build a new refinery. Growers are going to vertically integrate and own part of that refinery, and it's a way for a crop like sugar to grab part of that middleman, just like a commodity might find ways to export directly to foreign customers.
And Doctor, you talked about sugar, and we talked a little bit about corn earlier. Biofuels, is that an industry that we can move into as the state advances?
It is, and I think Louisiana has, because of our diversity, we have a tremendous advantage of producing feedstock for biofuels. Unlike the Midwest, where it's principally corn and you use a conventional fermentation technology, Louisiana can produce very high fiber biomass crops like sugarcane, miscanthus. We can do that. The challenge right now is to find a process that can break down that cellulose into ethanol. Can we do it at a commercial scale that's economical, and also can the processor that's making that biofuel produce it at a cost where they could pay a grower a price that he's going to cover his cost over the long run? And that's sort of the challenge right now. About 4 years ago, the price of corn was $2, ethanol was $3. Those corn ethanol plants were building plants and paying them off in a year. Then the price of corn went up to $4, ethanol's less than $2. So the challenge right now is to move to that second generation cellulosic ethanol in a way that we can pay feedstock producers a competitive price to keep them in business over the long run.
You talk about challenges in agriculture and the economy. We've always got challenges with time. And so we're out of time, but we want to thank our panelists, Representative Anders, Dr. Castille, Dr. Richard, and Dr. Salassi. When we come back, we'll have a few closing comments.
Well, a lively conversation about some topics that I wasn't very familiar with.
Exactly. I had no idea about horses. I had no idea about what we're doing with sugar, and so I learned a lot.
We did indeed, but it's also inspired me as well. We were talking about we have the best food in the world here in Louisiana. We all know that. But sometimes some of us haven't gardened ourselves that much, and I understand you're doing something in the Freeman household?
We do. We've got some tomatoes, we've got some eggplant, and so we're trying a little bit. We're raising some future farmers in the Freeman household.
Well, that's good. That's good. Keep your day job,
that's
too.
Right.
All right. That's all the time we have for this edition of Louisiana Public Square. We encourage you to comment on tonight's show by visiting our website at lpb.org/public square. While you're there, you can also watch expanded interviews from our backgrounder. Take this month's survey and find links to resources such as a list of the state's farmers markets and what's in season now. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook.
One of the state's top grossing commodities is marine fisheries, but it is being threatened by the Gulf oil spill. Join Louisiana Public Square next month as we travel toward the coast to explore the impact to the state's landscape and livelihood on crisis in the Gulf, Louisiana, and the oil spill. Thanks for watching, and good night.
And a special thanks to the people of Alexandria for their hospitality. We'd also like to thank Rosa Dunn, Chairman of the Friends of LPB Board, and Board Member Deborah Randolph for their assistance. And finally, a sincere thank you to the Arts Council of Central Louisiana for making the Performing Arts Center available to us. Good night, everyone.
For a copy of this program, call 1-800-973-7246 or go online to www.lpb.org. Support for this program is provided by the men and women of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Through sustainable forestry, LFA members promote the health and productivity of Louisiana's forests for generations to come. And the Foundation for Excellence in Louisiana Public Broadcasting. Support also provided by First South Farm Credit, the farm credit system's lender for production agriculture, agribusiness, and landowner financing in Louisiana since 1933. The Arts Council of Central Louisiana supports emerging cultural organizations, artists, and lifelong learning through grant opportunities and the resources of the Fry Nonprofit Development Center, the Hearn Stage at the Crest Theater, and the Coughlin-Saunders Performing Arts Center in downtown Alexandria.